Hi everyone, my name is Wayne Jones. I'm the University Librarian here at Carleton Library. This is an installment, the next one, in Tell Me About Yourself. And I'm here with Edward Bilodeau, who's the head of the Systems Department.
That's right.
And the very new 1 month head of the Systems Department.
That's right, it's been exactly 1 month.
So you were saying a little earlier, but tell us a little bit about how you got here, where you were, what some of your past experiences in some detail.
To go very quickly, I graduated from McGill. I studied physics at McGill, graduated in the early 90s, and then spent most of the 90s working in IT, working for software companies that did ERP software, large software systems. I did a lot of user education work there. I worked in training, and I worked also managing teams and development. And then shifted over into when the dot-com boom happened and got into web development and did some project management there, sort of on the ground floor there. And about after that, I sort of transitioned into academia, and that's when I went to McGill. And I started working there based on my previous experience, and I was teaching in their e-commerce program. And at that time also decided to go back to school and get my master's in library and information studies because of the link with information architecture and web design.
Right.
And so I was at McGill for a while doing that. I think that was with their Center of Continuing Studies. They had this, it was an evening program for e-commerce. From there, at one point, an opportunity came up for my wife and I, and we decided to move to Ottawa. And I actually came and worked at Carleton for about a year. I was on a contract working in the communications department as the webmaster.
What year was that?
10 years ago, so maybe like 2006, 2007.
So we definitely have people in the library here who you
definitely, there's people,
with.
yeah, there's people here. There's people that, actually the person who was the webmaster and who left to join ICS, he's still here as well. He's working, he still heads up the web group here. So it's been great to hook up with him and talk to some of those folks. But anyway, I did that for about a year, and then once that contract was done, I went and worked at a nonprofit in Ottawa, and then got lured back to Montreal by McGill again at the library school to go and work there. And after spending 2 years there, I then went and worked in the library proper as the web services librarian, which is managing a team with some developers and stuff, taking care of the web services for the library. And so I did that for a while, and that, it was the library technology systems group, I think that we were called. I was the web services librarian, and then over the time of the span I was in that group, it merged, it became the digital initiatives group, as that happens often, and I went from being web services librarian to the user experience and support librarian. And so I was there in that role for maybe 6 years, something like that, just in the time I went through the tenure process, and I got tenure. And at that time, when I was starting to think about what I wanted to work on next, I realized that whatever career path was interesting to me, which was going to be trying to move into leadership positions in libraries, I really felt that I needed to get more experience in public service. I had a good understanding of technology and how to manage those teams. And you can understand, when you work in those groups, you can understand if someone tells you, it describes to you what it's like to be in public service, what it's like to work with students and faculty. You can understand it, what it's like to do collections development, but until you actually do it and you're on the front line, you don't have as deep or as rich or as great an appreciation for the work that's being done, but also the importance of systems and the work that's done in systems to support that.
Sure.
Right? It's not a nice to have, it's essential. And when it's gone, when it's not working, it is for a short period of time, it has a tremendous impact. It's incredibly disruptive. The team, there's a lot of work between those two groups. And so I found that, anyway, I'll say that having made that decision, there was an opportunity within the library. There was an opening in the business and management library to be the business management librarian. And since I had experience working in business, I had done some studies too when I was doing in library school. I had done some studies in sort of working on organizational learning, organizational culture, and things like that. And also I had some background where during the dot-com days, I was working for a marketing advertising firm doing communications work and stuff. So I had a lot of this experience which I could bring to the table. The finance stuff, not so much. That was a bit harder to get up to speed on, the Bloombergs and things like that. But anyway, so I went for that role, and so I was able to get that. And so I spent 2 years being the management and business librarian for the Des Hotels Faculty of Management at McGill. And then the opportunity came up here, and my wife and I happened to be at a point where we were starting to look around and we wanted to do something a bit different. We wanted to go out there, and we really enjoyed living in Ottawa last time we were here. And so when this opportunity came up, I thought it would be great, and it's turned out amazing.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that the first month has been good. May it persist that way.
Yeah.
I think it's saying the obvious to say that your path has been actually quite interesting, very thoughtful in a way about sort of wanting to see the public service side of things. The other thing too, but ending up doing comms jobs, that kind of thing, then bring lured back to another job kind of thing. I'm glad we lured you here. That's good too. But all jokes aside, I mean, it just seems like the cumulative result of that is that you've seen a lot of sort of sectors, because the classic one thinks of is that someone gets in systems and they just gain knowledge in that, and there's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but they just become kind of hardcore systems and they move up, they become head of a department, that sort of thing. Yours has been very different, where you get sort of all sides.
Well, I felt that what I realized, I think earlier on, this was even very early on when I was doing my studies, one of my main strengths, I think, is bridging that gap between the technology and the people and the organizations. It's being in that space in between. And so if I go back and look at my roles, I can identify that, I can see that as a theme in that. In almost every role, I'm working with people and teams and organizations that are trying to get something done, and I'm helping them understand the technology or coming up with a design for the technology that will meet their needs. And then conversely as well, working with the technology team, able to translate for them the needs of the client or whoever that we're working with, and translating that to the in a form that they will understand. So it's sort of having one foot in both is that's where I find my strength is doing that. And you can definitely, there are people that will specialize differently. So I guess I specialize in that, you would say. But some people will go deep, and we need those people that are going deep on, we have them here, the people that go deep on whether it's the desktop support, the hosting infrastructure piece, or applications or services, or even some of the metadata technologies and standards and things like that. You need people so that when we're working and sitting down with a client, they have that part cold, right? And you also need people like we have in public service and other areas who know what they're doing cold. And I find that my role is not going to be going in and configuring servers. We have experts that do that. My role is going to be bringing people on the table and facilitating those conversations. And as I've been telling my team, my role is to make sure that we're working on the right things, we're working on important things, and that we're working well together.
Right.
And so that's really, and I think that's been a theme throughout all of these different roles.
I have to say, I'm happy to hear you talk about people from both sides of it, or from two flavors of people. So you're basically obviously talking about users and what they need kind of thing, but also your team itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not as if you're coming into a room full of servers and robots.
That's right,
You're
exactly.
and working with people.
Definitely.
So that's a very important, very important aspect of
it.
For sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's one thing that I've always felt as well, the strength of, it's really important to recognize these people, and if you're going to get the most out of the team, is that you really need to, make it possible for them to fully engage with their work. That means you need to give them responsibility and autonomy, and you need to support them and coach them and help them develop in those areas. But they need to be not just sitting there waiting for an email to be able to say, do this, do that. They need to be looking out there when something's happening. They'll jump on it. They'll take the initiative. Yeah. And that's the kind of culture that I'm coming into here, and so I'm going to be able to grow that and move that forward. So, and I realize as well that as much I do have a fair amount of experience, but the experience and the expertise that the people have here about Carleton, about the library, about the history, about the systems, about what things work. These are things which I'm just starting to learn now. And those, in many cases, are the things which will make or break these projects, right? You can't come in with templates and project plans and say, this is how we did it, I do tell my team very often, it's normal when you come from somewhere else to share your past experiences, but I've let them know that's not those. I'm not trying to signal that that's what I want to happen. My past, all the companies I've worked for in the past, all the organizations, we did our best and we did what was right for them, for those organizations. Right. here's a completely different thing. But everyone's got experience, and they're open to that. They're open to those sort of conversations.
And I happen to hear that too. I mean, obviously people are, well, not obviously, but I think you have a group there that will understand that you're coming with experience that will be leveraged, used, built on, whatever you want in some way. But you're not coming with the sort of the organizational plan of McGill and saying, here's what we're going to be implanting here. Obviously, that would not work in any way.
No, exactly. And the other thing too is that I'm coming on board to a situation where it's, things are working well, right? And I see, the challenge I've been given is to take things to the next level, right? It's not, and I've been in other situations in other places where I've been brought on board and it wasn't like that. There was a lot more groundwork that needed to be done. It was still much earlier on in the process. So that's a good thing, and so now I feel that that's another reason why it's important to sort of, for me to take the time, understand the people, and not just in my group, but in the other groups as well, and to find out what people have been, just how things have worked together and some of the concerns people have. One of the challenges in a situation like this is that, or one of the things that I'm aware of is that very often, because of the past history and how things have worked out, there may be some times where some things which people just take as normal. There may be some problems or issues or frustrations which over time, just if it hasn't got resolved, they just assume that that's just the way it's going to be.
Right.
And I have an opportunity here to maybe ask some questions as a new person and try to maybe get them to articulate some of these things, because maybe now is the time that some of these issues can be addressed, right? Or maybe I have a fresh perspective that can help, whether it's another group or my group, move forward in some areas. So
I'm curious in a general way, you mentioned just a few minutes ago about, of course you did mention your public service work kind of thing, you mentioned the systems work, you mentioned communications, that sort of thing, but at some point you also said something about taking leadership roles.
Yeah.
Why is that important? Like why is that, what are the aspects of leadership, heading a team, sort of things that are attractive when, of course, you have the experience to be a good business librarian,
right,
to be a good systems librarian.
Yeah.
What is it about leadership that's important?
I think for me, why I'm drawn to leadership, it has to do with, if I look at what I believe my strengths are, what I have to offer, where I can have the most impact, it's really working with people. And I find that in leadership, everyone here, there's leadership in terms of having a position in a hierarchy. I think everyone has a leadership role to play. Every single person in the organization can play a leadership role. But if we're talking about leadership in terms of, being part of an organizational structure where you have some more responsibility and ability to affect larger groups of people, and to be part of conversations that are going to have an impact on a larger number of people, I find that in that position, my ability to sort of act again as that, representative or interface between people and these other cases, to understand the different perspectives and to bring them together and to try to come up with a way of articulating. Because often it's about that. Often it's about listening to all these diverse voices. So much of what we do is, we very rarely have the luxury of just waking up in the morning with a perspective and then forcing it through all day. Very often it's juggling different perspectives, different priorities. And when you're dealing with people, you need to be able to listen to these different perspectives and be able to articulate them, but also to come up with some common ground so that people can find a way forward. And I find that in a more formalized leadership position, there's more ability for me to do that. I've always done that. Anytime I ask anyone who's ever been in a meeting with me, that's just for better or for worse, that's my role. I just fall into that role. But in a more formal leadership position, I feel that it gives me the ability to have even more impact in that regard. And so right now, it's been a month, so I'm starting primarily in my group and within the groups we interface with directly. But I'm looking forward to, I've already started meeting some of the other groups on campus that we work with on a regular basis. And I'm looking forward to spending more time with them, but also working with groups that we maybe don't work with all the time. One of the things I noticed when I was doing my homework on Carleton before even coming for an interview here, was that there to me seems to be a very strong network approach. There's a lot of groups that collaborate and work together on things that primarily in the IT sphere. I know that there's a large central IT department, but there is still a fair amount of IT expertise and systems expertise throughout the university, and people that are interested in different ways, and different groups working together. And so for me, that is really interesting to me, and I'm really looking forward to that. I'm also looking forward to working with our partners in Oakville. For me, that's something which I know there's something similar in the Quebec system, but it's not. It's not as far advanced as far as, in my opinion, providing real solid value, especially in terms of systems, some of the systems that are there, Dataverse and things like that, which are just, for me, until coming to Carleton, that was just something I saw on a PowerPoint slide. Like, there was that capability, the fact that you've got these organizations working together that can provide these core services is just a huge plus, because I know how hard it is if you sit down and roll up your sleeves and say, we're going to do this ourselves. Well, that's really, really difficult. And it's the same thing now that with Collaborative Futures that we're starting. Why I'm really excited about that. I know it's a big project. It's going to be a lot of change, but this is not the first time Oakville's done something like this. This is part of a, I don't know if you can even call it a tradition, but this is, they know how to do this. Oakville, you know how to do this. The universities involved have worked together on these things before, so it's not breaking new ground in that way. Right? It's taking the organization and those relationships that they've invested in, that they've built, and now using it to really, in my mind, effectuate some major change by having this shared system. So
that's the whole, you summarize actually the very idea behind it, and you're quite right about the fact that this is not new to Oakville, this sort of thing. The scale of this is probably something that's very, very new to Oakville, or very bigger than it usually is, kind of thing. But also the thing about, when you're talking about hitting the catalog and hitting the basic discovery layer, you're hitting at core points that every library has. So that gives it some sort of biggerness than some of the other projects.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't part of the conversations, but I can imagine that because all libraries are at some point are facing that need to upgrade their system. And you have all the people that work in these libraries facing this. They know it's either imminent or coming a few years down the road, and they're getting together with their peers, their friends at Oakville, talking about the other projects. And I'm sure those people saying, why can't we do the ILS this way? Why can't we try something bigger, more ambitious, right? And because I think that's why you make these investments, right? It's not because you're trying to patch a little hole in the corner. It's because you're trying to build some capacity. Right? And there's trade-offs to be made about working collaboratively, but you can see now that once you make the investment, you start to be able to get benefits from that, and I think that's what we're going to start seeing now.
And I'm happy to hear you recognizing that as well, because there's no doubt this is forget the rest of Oakville, but just at Carleton, our participating in this, and we were on board right from the beginning, is going to be a huge kind of change here of I don't know what to say, mindset, how do you look at things, just the various things about being part of what is now a 14 or 15 member sector of Oakville. That's going to be gigantic in itself, and all of what needs to be done to sort of get us ready to be there, to get in that car kind of thing is something.
Well, I think it's a huge opportunity. I know it's going to be disruptive, and this is something which no one has ever said anything different from that. I think talking about this project. And I'm also very well aware that, and my team and I have been talking about this, that for us in systems, technology change is normal. That's how we work. That's part of our job, is dealing with this. But we recognize fully that for most other people in the library, that's not. The technology piece is not where they spend their time thinking. They don't spend their energy dealing with technology that's shifting. The system's there, it works the way it works. They have other things that they're used to putting their energy in. But they count on that foundation being there, and so that's why I understand that it's a very big deal, right, for a lot of people to be having that sort of change coming at them, and realizing that not only are they going to have their regular changes, but they're going to have that as well. But I still think it's a huge opportunity. I think anytime you do a systems implementation like this, it's an opportunity for an organization to reflect on how they do things, because there's so many times we do things just because that's the way they've always been done. Right? And I just think that here, there's the opportunity for us in moving to a new system to reflect on some of these things, and especially because it's a system with new capabilities, to maybe do things a bit differently, but even more, we get us this opportunity to learn from the other universities, right? And there are things in this system, and there are decision stuff. There are things which add a lot of value, and there's things which are very specific to Carleton and how we work that add value to what we provide, the service we provide to the university, and the system will support those things. And then there's other things which just everyone does the same way, and it's not, we don't need to spend a tremendous amount of time worrying about that. And I think the groups that are working at the OCO level are in the process now of sorting this out when we talk about shared policies and things like that. Yeah. It's that balancing where the things that we can share, which make it easier for us to work together, while still giving every individual institutions the ability to set the local policies they need to and have the functionality they need locally to meet local needs. And it's always a question of trade-off and stuff, but I think it's a great opportunity.
No, definitely so. And you're quite right about you mentioned the word disruptive. It's definitely going to be disruptive for here, for each participating institution, for OCL generally. But OCL is also famous for a huge amount of work went into the planning for this. There was like a 2-year phase of sort of getting to where we are now, sort of thing. So that bodes well for the future.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, Ed.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
I look forward to working with you. That's great.
Me too. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.